The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
The Tankopotamus Washington Wizards did what they do best last night. They lost by 25 at Cleveland to stay on track to be one of the worst teams in the NBA. They're the second worst team now, thanks to what happened between two of the worst as Utah beat Sacramento, a game that neither team wanted to win. They used to be worried about one team tanking to get the top pick. Now everybody tanks. Is it a problem? Yeah, we'll discuss that coming up. College basketball, how about Maryland getting a win last night? Tickets were on sale, I kid you not, for $1 last night for their home game against Iowa. A Big Ten game. You could buy tickets for $1 on StubHub. Of course, the fees were $5, so you'd have to spend $6 to get in the arena. And they were up for seats, but who was going to know if you moved down? There's nobody there. A combination of things for that. One, team isn't any good. They had 2 Big Ten wins going into last night. And 2, it's a 6 o'clock start. A 6 o'clock start on a Wednesday night in Washington, D.C., where you still have some lanes that have been cut down because of the snow, the teeth of rush hour traffic. And, you know, I know it's television, and it allows the Big Ten Network to have a triple header. I guess this game was on Fox Sports 1 last night, but they had to cram in some other games on that. But that's where we are right now. And on top of everything else, it's a college basketball world that it's totally transactional now. There was a time when Lefty Driesell, the master recruiter, used to bring recruits into sold-out Cole Fieldhouse, and he'd come out with the victory sign, and people would go crazy, and they'd lock up the game, and everybody would sing amen and go, wow, what an atmosphere to play college basketball in. Isn't that great? I want to go play in a place like that where it's just incredible every night. Well, that's not the case anymore. And a point of that was last night as Kansas State lost a home game to Cincinnati by 29 points, and Cincinnati's not any good either. Cincinnati is 13-12 on the season. They're 5-7 in the Big 12. And the loss now for the Wildcats for Kansas State drops them to 10-14 and 1-10 in the Big 12. At one point, the Bearcats were up 32 points in this game. Team did not show up, basically, and they haven't shown up for much of the season, evidenced by the 1-10 record. Jerome Tang is the coach of Kansas State, and I don't know whether he knows he's going to get fired or you know how things are going to play out after the season ends. You don't turn in a season like this and get a big contract extension off of it. We'll see how long he lasts, but this was after the loss last night, 29 points to Cincinnati, and he had enough.
Hey, I'm gonna honor Christ like I always do. Blessed to do this, but this was embarrassing. These dudes do not deserve to wear this uniform. There will be very few of them in it next year. I'm embarrassed for the university. I'm embarrassed for our fans, our student section. You know, it is just ridiculous. We got practice at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning, and we will get this thing right. I have no answer, no words. So y'all got 2 questions. So whoever want to ask 2 questions, I'll answer them to the best of my ability right now. But right now, like I'm like pissed, and this is all right. Questions.
I guess it's just kind of cousin. If you look at your road and home splits, the last 4 road games have been down the wire, and run off the court. Just kind of explain that.
Yeah, I don't know. I asked the staff this week that same question, and they said that more the opponents. You play. I don't know, because I followed Minnesota last year. closely, and they played great on the road and struggled at home. So then they started staying in hotels at home, like treating it like a road game. And so I even talked about, hey, do we need to change that change? But like, no, none of that crap matter, man. These dudes got to have some. They got some pride, man. They got some pride. It means something to wear a K-State uniform. It means something to put on this purple, man. Our like everything this university is about and all that it's been about. Why I love this place, man. Like they don't love this place, so they don't deserve to be here.
Just what did you make of the student section with paper bags on their heads?
Yeah, I'd wear a paper bag too if I was them. Thanks a lot, fellas. God bless.
Good night, Coach. The one thing that he said is really indicative of how college basketball has changed completely as now simply a transactional operation. When he said it means something to wear a K-State uniform. It means something to put on this purple and everything this university is about and why I love this place. They don't love this place, so they don't deserve to be here. No, they don't love the place. They love the money you paid. They might have gone someplace else. Look, Manhattan, Kansas is not Manhattan, New York. That's not the most exciting place to be. The players that wound up there probably got the best financial deal to wind up there, and they're transactional, and they'll be someplace else. And when you say most of the players won't be there next year, some of that will be their choice. You may have one or two from this team that you want to keep, but they'll probably leave, and they'll have a whole new team, just like the University of Maryland last night. Now, maybe this team is finally coming together too late. They're, unless they miraculously win the Big Ten tournament. If they get in, I'm not even sure they get in. They're like the fourth worst team in the conference right now. If they miraculously win the Big Ten, then they would get to the NCAAs. But other than that, they're not going to make it. And they play last night against a team that had beaten them earlier soundly at Iowa. And they beat them 77-7. They actually played decently. They shot 53% from the field, decent from three, 8 for 23. And had they made more free throws, it might have been a bigger margin. They missed 9 free throws, still won the game by 7. Iowa, and you can credit the defense for some of this, I would think. Iowa shot 42%, 7 of 28 from 3. And Andre Miller, who may be one of the rare guys who is going to stay 2 years at the same school, starting to emerge for Maryland. He had a big game last night with 24 points. And Diggy Coit, who's like 38 years old and finally out of eligibility, came off the bench again, gave him 19 points and hit a couple of threes. But that's where we are in college basketball. And maybe things haven't turned as bitter for Maryland. And you had Buzz Williams the other day saying, I don't have a computer and I don't use email, but I'm aware of how disappointing we are. Well, good for you on that. And now he's got this great recruiting class coming in next year. And even if they were worse than this, which is hard to imagine, he would still be coming back next year, unless there was a complete – well, I say this. If there's a complete mutiny by the players, who cares? Just get new players. It doesn't matter. That's another thing that the coach used to be able to hold over the heads of the players. Playing time, the player wanting to continue his career at that school – now with the portal, they can go where they want next year. It's like having a contract in the NFL and going, yeah, I don't want to play for Cleveland. I'm going to go play for Seattle next year, and I'm going to make the same money or more money. Yeah, that's kind of the way things work now in college basketball. And last night, there's some video, if you find it on the internet, not hard to find. Syracuse had a league game, an ACC game against Cal last night at the Carrier Dome, which, okay, you never fill it up because it's a football stadium as well, but a basketball crowd back in the day, the Georgetown-Syracuse games, the league games that they played when they were back in the Big East, you'd get 25, maybe even close to 30,000 people there. There was nobody there last night, and they actually won in overtime. But it's a league game against Cal. So that's kind of where we are. Give me the good old days. So there he goes. Go ahead, Boomer. There was a celebration the other night for Indiana. Indiana now holds the distinction, unless somehow Miami of Ohio can complete an undefeated season. They're ranked 23 in the country, and they're still unbeaten. So, the likelihood of them winning the national championship undefeated is next to nothing, 1/1,000,000th of 1% or something like that. And Arizona lost the other night at Kansas, so that was the last of the big boys that went down. They'll probably still stay number one. Tough place to win, but they're not going to finish undefeated. But before that game, they had a celebration of the Indiana team, the 1976 team, which is the last college basketball team to go undefeated. And some of the players showed up. I think they're all living. As far as I know, Bob Knight, of course, the coach, has passed away. But these are guys now in their early 70s, and it has been 50 years since they won the national championship. And they were honored on the court before a game earlier this week, and then held a news conference, or maybe the news conference was before the game. But I pulled a couple of the really good sound bites from that. One, Quinn Buckner, who was I don't know if he was not the star of that team. That was Scott May, but he was the point guard. He had actually played football. He was an all Big Ten safety for a couple of years before he gave up football to concentrate on basketball. Played in the NBA for, 5 or 6 years, was an Olympian, was a coach for some time, has been a basketball lifer. And this was Buckner, along with his teammate Tom Abernathy, talking about what they were able to accomplish back in 1976. And as we've seen teams go down, and we've seen teams, I believe Gonzaga a few years ago got to the championship game undefeated and lost. So we've had teams that have come close, but unlike the 72 Dolphins, Buckner says they don't pop the champagne corks when it happens.
We don't celebrate. I have not been to a celebration. The Miami Dolphins thing does not happen, where they pop the champagne because they, last undefeated. We don't do that. If they do, they've done it without me, and I don't think they would at least tell me about it. So I'll speak from that perspective. I'll let Tommy speak to that, too.
Well, so I've got twins that they're 46 years old now, but they've started to call me in the last 10 or 15 years. I don't know who asked that question. It was pretty good. And my brother Spike back there will start calling me as teams that start losing and stuff. Now, I'm not celebrating crazily, but within our family, we sort of laughing. But I'll be honest, we have been invited to go to the Final Four, and I was talking to Mike Fox about this. And part of the celebration, they're going to remember the old guys, but they said we may have the opportunity to crown the new champion if we want to. And to me, I personally would love to crown, it's only one of two teams, either Miami of Ohio or Arizona, to take over what we have had for 50 years. So really, we hold it, it's not ours, but a lot of IU fans probably don't want to see that happen, but be cool.
Well, it's not going to happen with Arizona. They've lost, and again, your chances of Miami of Ohio not great. So more than likely, we're going to have 50 years pass between national championship teams that finish the season undefeated. Last thing, this was last part of the news conference, the message that Bobby Knight, and as part of the celebration the other night, they announced they're going to build a statue for Bobby Knight, which you might say, well, of course, he won 3 national championships, but his relationship in the last 20-plus years of his life with the school was not good. He finally came back to Bloomington when he wasn't well and showed up at a game, which he said he would never do. But he was fired and should have been fired for what he did in the year 2000. And so Quinn Buckner was talking about Knight and the message that he had given the team after they beat Michigan in '76 to win the national title.
After we won, he said something to me that I didn't fully grasp, and you guys know what I'm about to say. He said, "You've done something for the people in the state of Indiana. You'll never understand what you did for them." We just had it happen again in football, because the ethos of Indiana is about sports. And we were able to bring it on the basketball side, and people have lived with that for 50 years. You now have it in football, which is just incredibly humbling for someone like me who was involved in the sport to have watched that kind of success. But what it does is it brings people together. That's really what he was telling me. Again, I'm 22 years old and I'm getting ready to go to the Olympics and the pros. I was not paying attention. For the people in the state of Indiana, what we were able to accomplish, we didn't fully understand. We understand it now because of what Kent talks about, what the question about why people ask us those questions. Because for many people, that makes them stand taller and put their shoulders back, and for that, we can all be proud here 50 years later.
Well, I can tell you as a father of an IU grad, yeah, he's got his shoulders pulled back after the National Football Championship. The basketball championship in '76 was long before he was born. In fact, yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, the last time Indiana won the title was '87, and that was 4 years before he was born. So his great pride is in the football program right now, though he is much more of a basketball fan, and loved his experience at Indiana. Last 2 years they were really good, and got to see some great teams play. All right, coming up, the Wizards lost again. Haha, newsflash, but they are part of a larger issue of tanking in the NBA, and I've got some opinions to play for you as we continue, whether or not this is a severe problem for the league. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Having talked about sports on the radio for nearly half a century, I did not think that in 2026 we would be talking about a tanking problem in the NBA. So let's go back in time here. 1983, the Houston Rockets were bad enough to earn the top pick in the draft. I think there was actually a flip in those days that you couldn't, totally go in the tank to get the number one pick. They would take the two worst teams and have a flip. In fact, that went back to 1969 when Lou Alcindor was coming out of UCLA, having won 3 straight national titles, and they lost only 2 games in his entire career at UCLA. He was going to change the NBA, and he did. And the Milwaukee Bucks, I believe, finished with the worst record, but the Phoenix Suns weren't far ahead of them, or vice versa. They were the 2 worst. They had a coin flip. Bucks won. They took Lou Alcindor, won a championship. The Phoenix Suns lost the flip. They took Neil Walk. Neil Walk had a journeyman NBA career, 8 or 9 years. They didn't win anything. They didn't win bupkis with Neil Walk. So, 1983, as I say, the Rockets are able to draft Ralph Sampson, 3-time Player of the Year at Virginia. Kind of Victor Wembanyama before Victor Wembanyama, only in those days, big men were supposed to play inside. Ralph actually could have developed the kind of game that Wembanyama has, but that's not the way NBA basketball was played in the 80s. So he does his job with the Rockets in his first year, but they continue to stink past where they should stink. It's like, okay, something's really smelly here, and they knew coming in the pipeline was Hakeem Olajuwon in their backyard, playing for the University of Houston. And the University of Houston, of course, had lost that championship game to NC State in '83, and in those days, very unusual for a guy to come out, even a superstar like that, after only 2 years. And really, Olajuwon shouldn't have, because he needed to develop his offensive game more. But by '84, even with a draft that included Michael Jordan, Olajuwon was the big prize. Jordan was averaging less than 20 points a game at North Carolina, and nobody knew that Jordan was going to be Jordan, particularly the Portland Trail Blazers, who had the number 2 pick, and they took Sam Bowie. So as the season is going on with the Rockets, people are looking at what Bill Fitch is doing. They're going, geez, this is terrible. They're tanking. And they tanked the same way back in the early 80s as they tank now. They keep good players on the bench. If you look at those box scores from the late part of the season, major minutes were going to like 40-year-old Elvin Hayes. Elvin Hayes had his career. He helped the Bullets win the championship in '78, but by 1983, he was old and done and playing major minutes. That's how you tank. So Rockets again get the number 1 pick. They take Olajuwon. Didn't work out quite like they hoped, although Olajuwon did later lead them to 2 NBA titles with Jordan out of the league. But no, it didn't produce with Sampson, the Twin Tower dynasty that they were hoping for. Still, they got the number 1 pick. So the NBA goes, we got to do something about this. And in those days, there were only 7 teams that didn't make the playoffs. It was before, expansion, before teams like Miami and Charlotte and teams like that came in the league. So the 7 teams that did not make the playoffs, they had the draft lottery. And they thought, this will end it, because if you wind up with the worst record in the league, you could still pick as low as 7 instead of, number 1. And this'll stop all the tanking. Well, we had the controversy, might have been the frozen envelope, the bent envelope, but somehow the Knicks, who hadn't been good in a long time, now we're going to be able to get good with Patrick Ewing. Patrick Ewing was going to win a bunch of titles, and that was going to help the NBA get back on the map. Yes, at that time they were still holding the finals on tape delay. Like they needed that boost from New York, and they thought Ewing was going to do it. Was it coincidence that they wound up with the number 1 pick? I think people will go to their graves with that secret if they have it. So who knows? But that was supposed to stop it. Well, that's 40 freaking years ago. And here's what we have now. Here, it's not just one team that's tanking. There are teams that are trying to make sure they stay in the lottery and trading for star players like here, where you just got two Hall of Fame. Well, at least one of them's a Hall of Fame player, and they're not going to play. They're not going to play the rest of the year. Brian Windhorst yesterday on Get Up asked the question, does the NBA have a tanking problem?
It's not just Utah. Utah is being the most egregious of it, but there are multiple teams that are trading for players and immediately saying that they're injured and keeping them out for long periods of time. It's not just Utah using starters and then shutting them down. What Utah has done has been more egregious because they've had players who have been playing very well, and then they bench them for the fourth quarter. Their coach, as Bobby mentioned, Will Hardy, will sometimes literally just put his hands in his pockets and not call timeouts as the team gets steamrolled over. And that's where the transition has happened. Tanking historically has been done on the inactive list. The players in the games are always playing to win. And once a player is in on the active list, you rarely see them, not go full out. What's happening here is that they're putting the reins on players who are active in games, and that's the next step. And something very interesting happened yesterday. It's an important game in the tanking standings. Tonight, Utah is playing Sacramento. These are 2 teams that are vying to get one of those top picks. And initially, when the Jazz put out their injury report yesterday, they listed Lauri Markkanen, who has barely been playing, out for rest. And then an hour or so later, they changed their injury report and said he's actually not going to rest, he's going to play. So what happened there? Did something happen behind the scenes? We'll see. Adam Silver will address the media, and I promise you will address these questions this week at All-Star Weekend. But I'm going to say, you can't put rules in that don't exist. And the Jazz are following the rules. They are activating healthy players and playing them, and they're just not playing them all out. So I don't think anything can be done in the next 10 minutes that's going to affect it. But something got the Jazz to make Lauri Markkanen active yesterday. I'm interested to find out more about that.
Well, here's what happened last night. 2 teams desperate to lose, and it looked like Sacramento was the more desperate team because they lost this game 121-93 to the Jazz, who improved to a whopping 18-37, and Sacramento stays safely at the bottom of the league, even below the lowly Wizards at 12-44. The Wizards did what they needed to do last night as they lost by 25 at Cleveland, heading into the All-Star break, safely tucked away, nice and dry inside in their sleeping bags, waiting for the lottery, and no real concerns. Now, what's also going to be interesting is what happens after the All-Star break. I don't quite understand this scheduling, but I think it started during the pandemic where they were having teams play back-to-back games in the same place. So we are going to be treated after the All-Star break to the Indiana Pacers, defending champion Indiana Pacers, I should add, but their best players out for the year with the torn Achilles, and they have 15 wins. The Wizards right now have 14 wins, and they're going to play back-to-back games at Capital One Arena. And it's going to be interesting to see which team is more desperate to tank. I would think it's the Wizards, but because they are in a position, if they don't finish bottom 8, they lose their pick, their top pick. That's not going to happen. Maybe that's something the league has to address, these lottery-protected picks, that they've got to do something about that. But as for, Lauri Markkanen, he played last night. He had 19 points and 7 rebounds, played well, and Jaren Jackson had 23. So I guess against the wishes of Danny Ainge, who runs the Utah Jazz, They won last night. That's a bit of a problem for them. Tony and Mike took a look at this yesterday on PTI. This is before the Wizards lost at Cleveland. But this is their view on what's going on league-wide, that there are teams that are, like, making sure that that they tank, like Milwaukee with Giannis Antetokounmpo. Once they decided not to trade him, now they have to not play him, because if they play him, they might win too many games. It's not a good situation at all. I mean, what they were trying to prevent back in 1983-84 has come back and bitten them in the butt big time. Again, Tony and Mike yesterday on the tanking situation.
I live in Washington, D.C., a city where the NBA team is trying to lose. The executives of the Wizards are trying to lose. And by the way, succeeding to lose. They are right now, because they want a higher draft pick. It's all about the draft pick. It's all about the draft pick, yeah. They are 14-38 this year. In the last 3 years, they are 47-169. Everybody should be fired. Nobody has been fired, because this is obviously the plan. They just traded healthy players for Trae Young and Anthony Davis, big names who are hurt, haven't played a minute. I'm not sure they will ever play a minute for the Wizards. I'm just not sure about that. And I think fans of this team, if there are any fans left, should bring a class action suit for fraud on the part of the Wizards for selling season tickets and not ever attempting to win. The Utah Jazz are not attempting to win. They're sitting their starters in the fourth quarter. You cannot close out a game when your starters are not playing. Close out a game. Look, players want to win. Players don't tank. That's right. Coaches, general managers tank, and owners allow it to happen.
We agree on that.
It's a plague.
100%. And now we will disagree. The league shouldn't touch this. You know why I can't? Because billionaire owners are going to say, we want to go to court, really? You want to prove that I'm doing this? I don't mean in the case of Utah, because it's easy. By the way, Danny Ainge, I know how much you respect Danny Ainge. He's brilliant. Okay, so let me just mention that Utah, by tanking, you tank to win. So ultimately, you are trying to win. A high lottery pick. See, I know Danny Ainge saw A.J. DeBanza score 36 last night.
I'd take the pick away.
So if you put, and I too.
I'd take the pick
If you put DeBanza with Markkanen, Kessler, Jaren Jackson Jr., Ace Bailey, and Keontae George next year, they make the playoffs. That's winning.
What about this year? What about the fans
if
at
I'm
these
a
games?
fan, I want to know my team can win next year.
I'm going to quote someone.
How about you know what the sin of the Wizards is? They don't get it right.
I'm going to quote someone.
That's the sin.
About a month ago, when the Steelers were looking for a new coach, they put Art Rooney II out there, and they said, what about the inevitable big rebuild? And he looked at everybody in that room and he said, we don't do that. We try to win every single game.
Good for him.
Good for him, and that's why he doesn't own an NBA team, because they don't.
You know what? Good for him, and I want DeBanza. Or I want that kid, Caleb Wilson, and so do you in Washington, because then you can stop losing intentionally.
47-169, and nobody's fired.
Don't get it right.
See, we're always playing for next year. Well, how about playing for this year? To be fair, we as fans said to Ted Leonsis for years, hey, stop making these teams that are maybe as good as first-round exit teams. We don't care if your team goes to the playoffs and loses in the first round. Build us a championship contender. Well, this is the way you do it, but the league has put itself in this position where there's quite a few teams that are making sure that they stay in the lottery. I think this thing with the protected lottery pick, like if you're good enough, then you lose the pick. I think that's something that they maybe have to get rid of. They have to outlaw that, because that probably is leading to this. But on the other hand, you're charging this kind of money for tickets and concessions and parking. I mean, it's not an inexpensive evening to go out and see a basketball game. And if you're seeing a game where the stars aren't playing and they're healthy, and the reason they're not playing is you're trying to lose, I mean, what's the point of sports anymore, right? You root for the home team. And if the home team doesn't win, it's a shame. Well, it's a bigger shame if they're trying to lose. And that's what appears to be happening here. Nobody rants like Chris Russo, and this was the big rant yesterday from Russo involving our own hometown NBA team.
Washington, they won a game Saturday night in Detroit. Nobody thought they were going to win, so it didn't add up math-wise. So they played the next game Sunday in Brooklyn against the Nets. Do you know they sat there 3 young players who were 20, 21, and 21 years of age, and only dressed 8, and one of them was a 10-day contract thing, and they got blown out by the Nets. I mean, because they want to protect their lottery situation. I mean, this is competitive sports. You got people. I know the Nets won, so the fans are happy. 17,000. This is no wonder Washington never wins. That is an absolute disgrace with what they did. But worse was Utah, who Saturday night in Orlando, they got a 17-point lead in the third quarter against the Magic, and he's got Jackson in there. They got the kid from Arizona in there, and Norif, the center. They took him out of the game, and they didn't play in the fourth quarter, and they lost. The next day in Miami, 2 days later, they did the same exact thing. That way they won. Why? They're protecting their pick because they don't want the top 8's protected. They don't want to lose the pick to Oklahoma City. Let me think of it, and it's not Will Hardy. He's got no power in Utah. Will Hardy doesn't make any decisions. This is Danny Ainge. Ainge played with Bird, Parrish, Walton, Dennis Johnson. And you think the Bird would put up with this? Here it is. They got a 17-point lead on a Saturday night against Orlando, who's playing for the playoffs, and he takes Jackson, his forwards, and his center out of the game. They don't play 1 minute in the fourth quarter, and they end up losing. I mean, John Stockton and Karl Malone played 17 years. Steve always kids me about the history. This is Utah history. Stockton and Malone played 17 years. Do you know that Malone at 39 years of age played 81 games and averaged 37 minutes, and now I looked it up this week. Karl Malone at 39 years of age.
God love Russo. He's a year younger than I am. He's 66 years old, and I first started working with him in 1988. He's still got his fastball. That's good stuff. And unfortunately, for all of us, he represents a view of people like me who grew up in an era where if you went to the game, you thought that there was some chance your team was going to win. I grew up a Bullets fan, and as I started to really get interested in the NBA, the Bullets were just getting good. Wes Unseld's rookie year, I was 10 years old. And I remember watching Bullets games on Channel 5, and I remember the days of them coming to Washington in 1973 as a good team. They had been to the finals in 1971. So most of my growing up, I was rooting for a team that was capable of winning. It's hard to believe how good the Wizards were then versus how they are now. But they were in the finals 4 times in the 70s. That's, if they win 2 of them, well, they win 3 of them, they're a dynasty. But in 2 of them, they were swept by Lou Alcindor and the Bucks in 71, and one of the big upsets in the history of the game, Rick Barry and the Golden State Warriors swept them in 1975. 78, they win the title. They only win 1 game in 79, back-to-back years. But if they win 3 of those 4, that's a dynasty, and that's the kind of basketball I grew up rooting for. As I got older, they started to age, and Abe Pollin made a big mistake. And again, this was something that he wasn't going to do. But that's the way you got good even then. He was told, okay, after all this ends, 1981, Unseld retires, they trade Elvin Hayes. Time to get bad, Abe. But no, he was trading rookies, trading draft picks for veterans. Dan Roundfield came in here. I think he had a full head of gray hair at that point. They brought in Dave Bing, who was a great player in his day. He was aging, and they stayed competitive. But if you want to be, Dave Bing was earlier. Excuse me, Dave Bing was here, but my time flying by. Dave Bing came here in 75 and was gone before the championship year. But the point being is they were doing that. They were trying to stay competitive, which is pleasing to the fans, but I guess it doesn't work. But I think things have just gone too damn far here. And there's just too many teams that are doing this, and witnessed this game last night between Sacramento and Utah, where both teams have to go out there and lose. The players aren't doing that, but the front office and the coaching staff knows the deal. don't win this game because you don't want to endanger the draft pick. And I don't think that's any way to run a league. Adam Silver's going to, as Windhorst said, he's going to talk about it this weekend at the All-Star game. They had nothing else interesting in the All-Star game. Steph Curry's not playing. They got injuries to young players, too. Cooper Flagg is not going to play. And the game has become unwatchable, completely. I'm not going to watch any of it. But I'll be interested to hear what the commissioner has to say. Coming up, Al Michaels telling stories of the Malcolm Butler interception, and also an interesting little tale of the last game that John Madden ever did. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Documentary series dropping today on Prime that I'm looking forward to seeing, called Soul Power, about the ABA. I saw an ABA game. The Washington Caps, who used to play at the old Washington Coliseum, which I believe is an REI now, next to Union Station. I saw them play with Rick Barry, Larry Brown, the longtime coach, won a championship at Kansas, and also in the NBA with the Pistons. He was the point guard on that team. And I'm really anxious to see this series, which a lot of it is going to focus on Dr. J. And actually, the reason, I'm sure they'll cover this, the reason that there was a merger between the ABA and the NBA in 1976, and that's why they're doing this series, because it's the 50th anniversary of the merger. The reason that happened was Dr. J. Dr. J was the league, and they needed to get Dr. J into the NBA. If Dr. J hadn't gone and stayed in the ABA, and he had a chance to go to the NBA, he was drafted by the Atlanta Hawks. Who knows how things might have been different. But we now have 4 ABA teams, with the last one, the Indiana Pacers making the finals last year. Now they're one of the worst teams in the league. That's the NBA. Al Michaels showing up on the Rich Eisen Show yesterday here on ESPN 630, telling stories as he does. Well, I think he's lost his fastball as a play-by-play guy, but Amazon, I guess, doesn't think so. He's going to come back next year for another season of Thursday Night Football at 81 or 82. Pretty amazing at that. But he was telling tales, as he does from time to time on the Eisen Show, which is based in Los Angeles, and Al lives in L.A., and they were talking about the Super Bowl that the previous Super Bowl between the Patriots and the Seahawks in 2014, when Malcolm Butler changed the game in one of the wildest plays in the history of the Super Bowl, which is still debated to this day, that the Seahawks should have given the ball to Marshawn Lynch. Instead, they throw a pass, which is picked off by Butler. Al Michaels called that game and recalled yesterday how he prepared for it, the unexpected, which actually happened.
The night before the game, I'm well prepared for the game, but now I'm going through the guys at the end of the roster, just in case. Mm-hmm. So maybe at 10:30 the night before the game, I'm in the hotel, and I'm looking at a couple of guys that maybe they get in, maybe they don't. And Butler happened to be one of them. And then, as you mentioned, he didn't even start the game. I think he played something like 18 snaps, maybe a third of the snaps in that game, because Kyle Arrington was in there, and they took him out of the game, and somebody got hurt. And so Butler is in the game. And then, fortunately, he was involved in that crazy catch where the ball bounced off Kearse like 4 or 5 times.
It was almost like a he did what moment.
It was a he did as Antonio Freeman. It was very much the same kind of a situation. And so when he is able to make the it's an astonishing play. To this day, though, Rich, everybody talks about the fact they should have given it to Marshawn Lynch. I get it. He made a terrible call. It was a bad call, a bad play, and obviously we know how it turned out. But it was second down. In my mind, it's in a 4-down situation. You have 3 more plays. So what I would have done, in retrospect, of course, being a couch coach right now, Russell Wilson, 5'11" maybe, roll him out to the left. He could run it in. You had Doug Baldwin outside, one-on-one, fade, throw it to Baldwin. Russell Wilson walks in. If it doesn't work, okay, it's 3rd down. Now maybe you go back to Lynch. But you and I both know that we have seen a ton of games and a ton of plays where sometimes the running back just doesn't get in. Mm-hmm. And they're at the 1-yard line. Now all of a sudden you're at the 3-yard line, a 2-yard loss. Could have happened. I know it's easy to say that Lynch should have been the guy. I'm just saying you got 3 plays. One should have been Russell Wilson rolling out.
We'll never. Do we ever know? Have you found out about why that decision was made? Because again, this,
The
by the way, this play got a 2-week renaissance of a run because the Patriots made the Super Bowl and the Seahawks made the Super Bowl. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been talking about it as much as we had over the last 2 weeks.
Right.
But have you ever found that out?
Well, the mystery is, because I did the next Super Bowl with New England, which was against Philadelphia and Minneapolis after the 17th season. And then Malcolm Butler he's in uniform. He's not playing.
That's something, Brockman, our resident Patriot fan, you have been wondering about that forever.
Yeah, it's one of those things up there we'll never know the true reason why he didn't play in that game.
You're right, because Malcolm doesn't talk about it.
Right.
Belichick doesn't talk about it. I think even Robert Kraft, I don't know if he knows. I've asked him a couple of times, and he says, I don't know.
Yeah, Matt Patricia, probably we still haven't heard.
Yeah, no one wants to talk about it.
For some crazy reason. I don't know why.
I think, and that's Al Michaels with Rich Eisen, I think the reason that Butler doesn't want to talk about it is it's a no-win for him. If he says, oh, yeah, I was treated badly by Belichick, that's not going to work because, compare resumes there. And I don't know why Belichick kept him on the bench. And again, what he did in that Super Bowl with the interception, it's not like he was an all-pro corner. He was a guy kind of at the end of the bench. He was playing because of injury, only 18 snaps in the game. That's not probably 60 snaps, 55 snaps, something like that. So I think that this was a case of a guy who recognized, this is not going to do me any good if I rip Bill Belichick for not playing me in the Super Bowl the following year. There were some who said he was late for practice. That Belichick always ran things that way. Probably could have used him, but I think in Butler's case, he lives off the fame of that. Sometimes one play will change your career. Al went into the whole Miracle on Ice stuff, with the new documentary out on Netflix, and he said, look, Michael Ruzioni scores the winning goal against the Russians. If the shot goes 6 inches to the right, as Ruzioni has said many times over the years, he's painting bridges. And instead, he's had a very successful career out of being Michael Ruzioni, making appearances, motivational speeches, the whole thing. He dined out on that goal for the rest of his life. Had he not made the goal, life would have been different. This was on John Madden. And Al has had a variety of partners over the years. And one he did not get along with. We know that because of what Boomer Esiason said. He did, if you remember this is way back, like 25 years ago, maybe more. Boomer Esiason was Al Michaels' partner for 2 years after he finished playing. And Al didn't like him, and he booted him out of there, and others came along. They had Dan Deerdorf and who else was Frank Gifford, I guess, was the trio in the booth. And then he did with Dennis Miller. Dennis Miller actually begat Tony Kornheiser, but by the time Tony went into the booth, it was Mike Tirico, and it was on ESPN. Al Michaels at that point, this was kind of the switch that was made. Al Michaels went from ABC doing Monday Night Football, as they had since 1970, to NBC, where he was then partnered with, or actually they went together, I guess. He had John Madden, and then they went to NBC. But Al has been very consistent about this over the years. The best partner he's ever had, and I guess, that's somewhat, looking at Kirk Herbstreit like you're good, but you're not that good. The best partner he said he ever had was John Madden. He said that this guy was the absolute best. And I'd forgotten this, but the last game that John Madden ever broadcast was a terrific Super Bowl between Arizona and Pittsburgh, which included what Al says is the greatest play in Super Bowl history. I think you could make a case the David Tyree catch is up there. They've had a bunch of them, but that's Al's favorite. It was a 99-yard interception return for a touchdown just before the half. But that turned out to be John Madden's last game, and Al regaled his young colleague there, Rich Eisen, about what that was all about.
It turned out to be his last. I didn't know it at the time.
You did not know it at the time.
No, John did not officially retire until April of that year.
So you did not know, as you're calling the Super Bowl, this was his last. He didn't give you a single indication to it, huh?
No, not really.
Right.
Not really. I mean, I think John had a great year. That was our 7th year together.
Right.
We had, the first 4 were at ABC, and then The next three were at NBC. No, John was in great spirits. I thought he called a tremendous game. That may have been my favorite game to announce, because what were the Arizona Cardinals doing in the Super Bowl, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the next to last week of the season, I think they lost to New England 47-7, and then they get in, and the boss Dick Ebersol, he's going crazy because it's our first Super Bowl at NBC, and he goes, I don't want the Cardinals in the game. I said, Dick, relax. A couple doesn't get up on Sunday morning, and the husband says to the wife, Zelda, the Arizona Cardinals are in the Super Bowl. Let's go to the movies. Dick, that's not going to happen. And the rating was great, and the game was tremendous.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. I remember, doing that game with NFL Network, as I've been fortunate to do for all these Super Bowls, to host the post-game show. And I'm coming down with Marshall Faulk and Deion Sanders and Mariucci and Irv, and we just get out of the elevator to go on the field to get ready for the postgame. And we get out, walking out of the tunnel, just as Larry Fitzgerald is running scot-free towards us. And we were just like, wait a minute, was there a whistle blown? What happened? How come there's nobody around him? No, he's took a pass from Warner, touchdown. The Arizona Cardinals are up with mere minutes to go.
About 2.5, yeah.
We could not believe what we were seeing. That was truly unbelievable. But what conversation do you have with John Madden after Harrison takes that ball for a score and you call it with him? It's unbelievable. That was one of the greatest moments, as you say, in the history of the Super Bowl. And you turn to John Madden at halftime, and what's the conversation like?
It was like we were both astonished at what that play was. I mean, there were 3 plays where we could have had a long discussion, but we got a commercial coming on the other side, as you well know.
Right.
We got the Fitzgerald play, and then of course the Santonio Holmes catch. But I remember Bruce Springsteen was halftime.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those things that comes into your brain, but I'm getting counted down to the commercial.
Mm-hmm.
So here are the Cardinals, this big underdog. Why are they here? They're here. They're here. And now the 2.5 minutes to go in the game, and they may become the Super Bowl champions. And it popped into my head, but it was too late to get it out. What I wanted to say was the Arizona Cardinals just asked Bruce Springsteen to come back out and play No Surrender.
Look at you.
Yeah, right. Yeah. You saw cutting room floor garbage, right?
Wow.
Well, yeah.
Bruce Springsteen and the Al Street Band.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty cool right there. Oh, man.
One step too late.
Yeah, and kind of hit by Al, I would say. As for Madden, he went on to talk about how he thinks he is the most important person in the history of the NFL. Now, that's quite a statement, but you think about this. He's a Hall of Fame coach, coached 10 years with the Raiders, won a Super Bowl, got in the Hall of Fame not as a broadcaster, but as a coach, then goes on to this, it has to be the best career any analyst has ever had in any sport, and then the game Madden, which is, there are a lot of people, because this is, 15 years ago or so, when Madden did his last game, there are a lot of people who only know John Madden from the game Madden. And most people think of him, at least my age, think of him as a broadcaster, though I do remember him as a coach. He was like one of the youngest coaches ever hired. Al Davis gave him the job when he was 32 years old, and he stayed 10 years with the Raiders. He retired at 42. He said 10 years is enough. He didn't like flying, and he was going to go home and spend time with his family. Problem was, his 2 teenage boys were never home. They learned to live without him, and so did his wife. So he got on the road in a bus, first a train, started doing games on CBS, and the rest, as they say, is history. Coming up, Soul Power drops today on Prime. Looking forward to seeing it. I'll give you a little preview on what Dr. J said about it. He's one of the co-producers. Don't go away.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
50 years ago this May, the ABA played its last game. The New York Nets, with Julius Erving, won the championship. And then there was a merger. That was the end of the red, white, and blue ball, unfortunately, delegated to playgrounds. But the ball that was so identifiable with the league went away as there was a merger of 4 teams. They had 7 teams left. Some had folded, but there were 7 teams left, and there were some crazy buyouts. The 2 brothers who owned the Spirits of St. Louis were really smart. Rather than taking a one-time payout of money, they negotiated for a percentage of the rights for the TV deal, which made them millions and millions of dollars. But the other teams just taking their buyouts were kind of out of luck. But the Denver Nuggets, the Indiana Pacers, the then New York Nets, who are about to become the New Jersey Nets, came in, along with the San Antonio Spurs. And the Spurs have won championships, of course. The Nuggets have won championships. The Nets have not, right? They have not won an NBA championship. And the Indiana Pacers have not won one. But the feeling was that the league needed some of the stars, particularly Julius Erving. Julius Erving in 1976 was the biggest star in basketball. And they knew that the league needed a boost, and they knew that getting Dr. J was part of it. Now, what happened with the New York Nets, it was kind of like the gift of the Magi. That's the one where the husband sells his pocket watch to pay for combs for his wife's beautiful hair, and she cuts her hair to pay for a chain for the husband's pocket watch. So they come into the NBA, but there is a fee for having to share the market with the New York Knicks. And the New York Knicks say, well, if we don't have this fee, we can't let you in because we're going to be hurt. We're going to be hurt sharing the market with another team, even though it's a team headed for New Jersey. I think they played at the beginning at like Rutgers. It was still considered the same market. So in order to get the money for the merger fee to be sharing the market with the Knicks, they had to sell Dr. J. And they sold Dr. J to the Philadelphia 76ers. And he was expected to make them instant champions, and they did make it to the finals. They played Bill Walton and the Portland Trailblazers, won the first two games. But then the Trailblazers, led by Dr. Jack Ramsey and Walton at his absolute best, they went on to win the championship. And the 76ers didn't win one until Dr. J had Moses Malone join him for the 1982-83 season. That was the one championship that he won in Philadelphia. But if you look back on how this league started, there was a feeling like, okay, there's room for another league. The NFL had successfully negotiated a merger with the AFL that led to the Super Bowls. So along comes the ABA, and they've got guys who, some of them aren't good enough to make the NBA, but some of them, like Connie Hawkins, who would have been a star, he was banned from the NBA by the league's legal head, David Stern. He kept him out of the NBA because allegedly he had associated with gamblers when he was playing at Iowa. And so he led the Pittsburgh Pipers to the first ABA championship. And then the money wars began, and they began to bring in players from the NBA. They had, 1974, the league was well into its existence, but they knew that Moses Malone was going to be a star. Moses Malone is one of the great, and I put this in air quotes, tragedies of the Maryland basketball program. Nothing anywhere close to Len Bias, of course, but he was a guy that Lefty Drizel had to have, and Lefty was a master recruiter. And Lefty managed to land Moses Malone. He got him to Maryland. He got him to one class. He had him room with John Lucas, who was the captain of the team. And it came time for the second day of classes. And Lucas said to Moses, "Hey, Mo, it's time to get up to go to class." And Moses Malone said, "No class today." And he went off and signed with the ABA for over $1 million, never played at Maryland, and went on to become a great star in the league. He was a skinny kid then, siding with the Utah Stars and played in the ABA until the merger. I mean, there were just so many stories like that. And I'm really looking forward to the documentary that drops on Prime today. It's called Soul Power, about the existence of the ABA, which lasted from 1967 to 1976.
They call it the ABA, the American Basketball Association.
There was something fresh in the ABA. We getting ready to show y'all, man, what y'all was missing.
We owe a great deal to the ABA. Pro basketball's most exciting new idea.
It was way ahead of its time.
Changed the history of the league. The NBA, they weren't ready for us, man.
Shoot, we got to put on a show.
The ABA emphasized innovation.
It was all about doing things the NBA wasn't going to do.
The most important contribution is the three-pointer.
Without the three-point shot.
Rick Barry, let's fly with a three-point bomb. Bang!
There's no Steph Curry.
Curry fires away. Bang!
The slam dunk contest started in the ABA.
Julius Erving walked so Michael Jordan could fly.
Oh, my goodness!
We had the flare collars, bell bottoms, platform shoes. We had the froze. They couldn't grow froze in the NBA.
Ball players come out with soul. Soul is like a divine expression of who you are.
ABA talent was comparable to the NBA.
They had some good players.
Moses Malone, George Gervin,
Rick Barry,
George McGinnis, Spencer Haywood.
Dr. J gave the league credibility.
My style was full speed ahead.
Dr. J is a black superhero.
Oh, man, he could fly.
Ball players went through struggles, but you see the resilience.
Basketball has always been an escape from the real world.
It was the only thing in town where black people and white people mixed together.
The leagues were rivals in the ABA. We were battling for our lives.
These were my brothers.
I was betrayed by my partners.
The modern NBA came directly from the ABA.
Looks a whole lot like the way we used to play in the ABA.
This story has to be told.
Time has marched on, but the memories are forever.
Soul Power. Dr. J produced it, co-producer, I guess, making the rounds yesterday. He was on ABC News and talked to Lindsay Davis about this documentary. Now, he looks pretty good. He's had his hair turn white many years ago, but I hadn't heard his voice this thin. I hope he's okay, but maybe it's because of all the interviews that he's been doing. But this was Dr. J about the impact of the ABA and what they brought to the NBA, which was a different style of play in those days.
Up-tempo. NBA had the Celtics. They ran. Most of the other teams didn't run. They played the brown ball basketball, which we used to call it that. Just as take a poke at them. And they stayed on the ground most of the time and, moved it around like a train running around a track. And, the ABA had wings. We were playing above the rim, floaters, lob passes, three-point shots. And there was a difference, I think, in terms of fan appeal. And this ball right here, the red, white, and blue ball, spinning in sideways or spinning in rhythm circles or whatever was an attraction. And, we attracted adults, we attracted middle-aged, we attracted little kids. So I think we were moving in on their territory during that time.
Tell us what it was about the culture of the ABA that it became this place for creativity and experimentation.
I think what was allowed was the coaches there. Some of these are guys who are now coaching in the ABA and they didn't coach in the NBA. Some guys played in the NBA, didn't fulfill those roles for assistant coaches, and so they were a little more open-minded.
What was your initial reaction when you heard that some of the teams of the ABA were going to merge with the NBA?
I had mixed emotions about it. I was so endeared to the ABA and all of its brothers, one for all and all for one. I felt if all 7 teams didn't go in, then none of them should go in. And as it turned out, 4 teams went in.
What do you think that the ABA lost as a result of that merger, those 4 teams?
Well, the 3 teams that didn't go in, and Kentucky was a champion in the ABA, and they didn't go in. So it's like,
but the style, the fun, the entertainment, did you feel that was diminished?
I think that was brought over into the
NBA.
Into the NBA. David Thompson, George Gervin, myself, we brought our style of basketball to the NBA.
What do you think about the experimentation that's taking place in the NBA now? NBA Cup, they've made different changes with regard to the All-Star game format.
Yeah.
Are you happy to see that? You like the changes?
I think the league is struggling to find the happy place, where the players are satisfied, the organizations are satisfied, the fans are satisfied, not only fans domestically but internationally. The NBA has a global footprint, and I think more than half of the top 25 players are international players. And I think domestically, we've lost some of that. I think some of the incentive for players is just to make money and, use the load management excuse when they don't want to play. And if you get a little injury, sulk and, have somebody lick the wounds for them, whatever. So it didn't used to be like that. It was always, hey, I want to bust some butt when I go out there, and I want to be the best in the world. And, I want to surpass the person who was before me.
The spirit of competition.
Absolutely.
Julius Erving, the best player ever to play in the ABA. I did see a game. We had a team here for 1 year. It was the Washington Caps. They had begun as the Oakland Oaks, and the Oakland Oaks won the ABA championship with Rick Barry in 1969. They were owned by Pat Boone. He lost a ton of money on them. Earl Foreman, who had once been Abe Poland's partner with the Baltimore Bullets, and I think it was less than amicable split, he wanted to one-up Abe. Abe always wanted to bring the Bullets to Washington, and he ultimately did. He just didn't have a place to play, so he had to build it himself. He built the Capitol Center, and the Bullets moved here in 1973. But in 1969, Earl Foreman bought the Oakland Oaks from Pat Boone, and here's how tight money was. The Oaks wore green and gold uniforms, just like the Oakland A's. They were Oakland Oaks. And the name was changed not to Capitals, but to Caps. And the reason is all they had to do was take off the 4 letters from the Oaks uniforms, O-A-K-S, and change it to Caps, K-A-P-S. And so that was easy to do. So this team in Washington is playing in green and gold uniforms. I don't know why, but they got players. They got Rick Barry. They got Warren Jabali, who was a tough guard, used to get in fights. And the point guard was Larry Brown. Larry Brown had been a great player at North Carolina, and there was sort of a prejudice in the league at that time against short guards. Larry's, 6 feet, maybe 6'1". But he was a terrific player, and we went to the game at the old Washington Coliseum, which is now an REI. It's right near Union Station. And it was ball night, and you couldn't buy those red, white, and blue balls in the store. And my father took me and my friend. We went to the game and saw it and got our balls, and we're walking back to the car. I don't even think they had parking lots around there because the old Washington Coliseum only sat like 4,500 people. There wasn't going to be a parking lot. So we were walking to the car, and neighborhood kids were like swiping at the ball, trying to steal it. Fortunately, we held on to the ball to the car, and I used it on the playground for years, and then eventually, they got sold in stores. But years later, actually 1 year later, the Washington Caps, knowing that they weren't going to make any money playing in the old Washington Coliseum, you had to sell out every game. To do that, they moved down to the Hampton area, and they became the Virginia Squires. And Rick Barry was on the cover of Sports Illustrated wearing a Virginia Squires uniform, which he never suited up in, but he said, I don't want my kids to say y'all. I don't want them growing up saying y'all, because I guess he thought in Virginia everybody says y'all. So he got himself out of Virginia, never played for them, goes and plays for the New York Nets. Meantime, they bring in Julius Erving, the Virginia Squires. They bring in Erving from Massachusetts, UMass. Well, at that time, there was no dunking in college basketball because of the Lou Alcindor rule. They thought Lou Alcindor would totally dominate college basketball if they allowed dunking, so they took it away. So by the time that he was at UMass, you couldn't dunk. You knew he was a great player, but nobody knew how great because his game was above the rim. He goes there. They bring in a guy named George Gervin. I mean, you think of all the players that could have played for that team, but Earl couldn't afford to keep them. They were always in money trouble, so he sold these guys off. Eventually, Julius winds up with Rick Barry with the Nets. They win the NBA championship, and the rest is history. But I have fond memories of the ABA, that 1 year that we had a team here, and saw some games on TV. And then I wound up in San Antonio in 1979. They were no longer ABA, but many of the stars were still on that team. Billy Paltz, who had also played with the New York Nets. I think he was the center on that team with Dr. J. Of course, George Gervin, one of the great players in NBA history and ABA history. James Silas was a terrific point guard. So I got a real feel for the ABA, and this maybe already has dropped on Prime. It's called Soul Power. All right, Bram is coming up next. It's a Friday again already. I'll see you back then, right here tomorrow, 9 a.m.